Full Ahead, the podcast about ships and shipping, with Alistair Eagles and Nigel Thompson.
Well, welcome to this edition of the Full Ahead podcast, and today we're actually on location. I'm Nigel Thompson, I'm a ship enthusiast, I think it's fair to say.
And I'm Alistair Eagles, and I'm 1-2, I think, yes, and we're down at a very windy Heysham Harbour this morning.
Just over your left shoulder, approaching us is a brand new multi-billion-pound vessel approaching Heysham for the first time. So truly history being made, which we shall record and post on our social media sites soon as well.
Yeah, I think I'm correct in saying this is the biggest ship that will ever have come into Heysham Harbour. 146 metres long and a 26 metre beam. So the Stena Futura is rapidly approaching.
Now, the last edition of the podcast, we were on a very small but very historic vessel, of course, the Danny, up and down the ship canal and the River Mersey as well. So from one extreme to another, this is a massive ship, and as Alistair says, it's probably the biggest one to come into Heysham. It's approaching now, it's delivered in white with a distinctive kind of logo of Stena Line.
Yeah, the performance has just left and Stena approaching, and for her first time in the port, blowing about 20-25 knots, southwesterly. She's coming in lightship, of course. It's a test run without cargo, so it's going to be interesting. We've got some brave captains on there. I think it's going to be a good one for them. I think. Let's see how we go.
Now, we're stood just by the distinctive red lighthouse, and as you say, performance has just left us. That was a big enough sight. It just went within a few feet of where we are here. It's high tide, I think, at the moment, but that is quite a bit smaller than the one that's coming in, isn't it?
Yeah, when we built those ships, we thought they were kind of at the maximum size. Stena's gone a little bit bigger, and it's going to be interesting to see how she performs. She's got lots of power, lots of thrusters, so she should do well, but it is a windy day, and Heysham is not an easy harbour. For anyone who knows Heysham, it's you turn in through some kind of concrete roundheads about 80 metres apart, and then straight away you're turning to reverse onto one of the 3 ro-ro berths in Heysham, but it is tight. There isn't really much room for error, and once you start your entrance there is no kind of way out. You are committing, you're going for it, and let's see how she does.
We'll chat more about the kind of mechanical side, because it is a hybrid ship as well. It's powered by a mix of fuel. Talk about a little later, but this is a lane wider than the ones that run normally from that Sea Truck used to run. Yeah,
lane wider, a little bit longer, and I think she takes around 160 trailers. This is a freight ro-ro ferry, so designed for the carriage of just the backs of the lorries on their wheels. But yeah, about 160 trucks when she's full. But yeah, here she comes. Let's see how she does.
This is Full Ahead, the podcast about ships and shipping.
So she safely made it through the roundheads despite the chop and the wind as well that's blowing at the moment. The blue skies come out, so she's really made her arrival, and she looking good.
Yeah, she looks really well. Colour scheme looks fantastic in the sunlight here. Just the sun peeked out of the clouds just as she came in. So for a first arrival, looking good. The paintwork is gleaming. It won't be like that for too much longer. But interesting designer ship as well. The accommodation kind of isn't quite under the bridge. There's some accommodation down the sides, some cabins right in the front there. But obviously designed to maximise cargo space. So right underneath the bridge is actually trailer space on that upper weather deck. Really interesting ship, and it's going to be great to go on board and have a nosy round at some point.
She's just turned 180 degrees. That's when you get the full sense of the length of the ship. It is massive compared to the ones that normally come into Heysham. It's quite a bit bigger, but also the front of it's very snub nose, if you know what I mean. It seems to be very sort of, the superstructure's right almost above the bow, isn't it?
Yeah, a really high kind of superstructure, but the bow is kind of one of these kind of vertical kind of bow designs, designed for maximum efficiency. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how she handles at sea as well. But yeah, all the kind of usual features you'd see for a ro-ro ship. Lots of sacrificial belting down the side on the kind of key points. I think she's the first ship that's come into Heysham that, as well as having bow thrusters, has also got stern thrusters. Certainly the first ferry. I know some of the gas rig ships have that, but first ferry to have both stern and bow thrusters. And she seems to be turning on a sixpence in kind of windy conditions. But yeah, for a first go, I'd say everyone's going to be really happy with that, and she looks the piece. She looks the...
We need to introduce our latest listener, don't we?
Sorry, yeah, we have got the dog with us at the moment, and Daisy the dog is also very happy to be ferry spotting, I think. Yeah.
Well, she's almost alongside it, looking really good. It's the ownership in Heysham. The first 2 ferries of the day have already left, and the Futura has arrived.
There are 3 ro-ro berths in Heysham. One that's primarily used by the Isle of Man service. That's the kind of southernmost berth. The middle berth is then used by CLDN for their services to Warren Point and to Dublin. And then Stena used the berth that's furthest north, berth number 3. And that one, as it happens, is probably the most difficult one to get onto. You've got to kind of turn right round, back around a bit of a corner. There's another vessel on the North Quay discharging, looks like a heavy lift cargo. So quite a narrow slot she's got to get into there. But again, seems to be doing it perfectly well with ease and, in good time too. It's not taking too long, to be fair to her.
What do you think of the fact that on the side there's quite a lot made of this idea of using methanol in the future as a fuel? I mean, it's obviously branded, so Stena are clearly proud to be saying we might be using it in the future, but I think as you hinted before, it might and actually doing it are different things.
Yeah, I mean, maybe she will run on methanol in the future, maybe she won't. It's all about supply, where you get that supply from. Is it green methanol? Is it not green methanol? How have you created that methanol? What source does it come from? And in a place like Heysham, how do you source it? How do you get it to the ship? So she can clearly run on methanol. She's been designed to do that. Is she running on methanol now? I guess not. Will she in the near future? Who knows? But it'd be interesting to speak to Stena directly and find out more about their plans.
I was reading today actually there's talk of work starting soon, I think imminently, on making Heysham kind of plug-in ports. In other words, when ships like the Futura come in and actually plug into shoreside power, not have to run generators and not emit CO2.
Yeah, I mean, shore power is quite a big thing in the shipping industry. It's quite hard to do in certain places, and regular ferry services are good contenders for it because you've got the same ships coming into the same berths every day. And much like your kind of different iPhone chargers, different ships might have different kind of connections to plug them in. So if you've got a regular ship coming onto a regular berth, that's a good candidate for shore power. One of the challenges is that the actual power network ashore. So you might have a ship that can do it, you might have the connection that can do it, but can the local grid cope with the power demands that a ship puts on it? And many of the ports around the UK coast, the actual local grid network struggles to provide that much power without kind of tripping the kind of RCD for the local village or the local town.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of challenge with shore power, but modern generators are much better than they used to be anyway. But it'd be great to see shore power in Heysham or in other ports of Liverpool in the future. And ferries are certainly an easy way to do it.
I was reading as well the sister ship. There's a second ship coming, I think, on the horizon. The Stena, I think it's the Nordica, which apparently will have sails as well. It's going to have sails actually on deck to help it travel.
I think it's Stena Connecta, isn't it? The second one, Stena Connecta. But she's going to be fitted with rotor sails as well. So rotor sails look like big chimneys that stick up from the top deck of the ship, and they basically rotate very slowly, and that creates a force just like a sail. So very scientific. The next one is being fitted with those, which will obviously give it reduced engine load at sea. It will effectively be reducing fuel consumption by maybe 8 or 10%, but obviously that's more windage as well, so you have to design them in such a way so that they can rotate when you're berthing, so it doesn't create that sail effect that you don't want when you're coming onto the berth. So pluses and minuses to those kind of systems.
Well, as we talk, I think we've final approach now to the berth, and I'm sure the kettle is on and sighs of relief all round, I imagine.
Yeah, she's done well, to be fair. First time bringing a ship into a harbour is always a nervous thing. People are still getting used to the handling of the ship, still getting used to the controls to an extent on a brand new ship, and they'll be delighted when those ropes go out, the door comes down, and they can breathe a sigh of relief. And then I think she enters service for real, I think it's next week, so it'd be good to see it in action, in anger kind of thing, rather than just this berthing trial that she's doing today.
Well, Alistair and I weren't the only ones braving the blustery port today. Matt Davies is a writer and photographer who told us why he'd been drawn to see the new arrival not once but twice.
I happened to have some spare time this week, and I thought it'd be really great to come up to Heysham, see the Stena Futura arrive and get some pictures at her first ever call at the port.
And what do you make of it?
She's certainly a very nice looking ship, quite futuristic as well, living up to the name. A lot of green credentials, so big, impressive, and quite impressive to watch it coming into Heysham as well with a narrow harbour entrance.
And you were in Birkenhead, I think, was it yesterday, to see it there, and under very dreek conditions, not very bright day, but obviously very keen to follow the progress of the ship and see something new.
That's correct. So I went down to Birkenhead to get some pictures, and the weather was terrible. It was blowing a bit of a gale, it was foggy, it was raining, so I thought, well, let's have another go and come up to Heysham today, and I'm glad I have.
It's been a good day with blue sky above us, which is always good, isn't it? For listeners to the podcast, I might not know that you're an author. You've written books about the ferry, one of the ferry services from Heysham. I mean, you've obviously got a real interest in the ferry industry. It's changing, isn't it? It's changing quite a bit in terms of size of vessels, as you just mentioned, but also how they're fueled and how they're powered.
There's definitely a move towards greener credentials, such as sail power, LNG, hybrid batteries, and then I think the industry, as an observer, is getting put together a bit, as well as a little bit of consolidation of operators as well. So certainly, like most things, times are changing. Ships have certainly got bigger. They've been consolidated. They're carrying more freight. What I would probably say is freight travel's very linked to the economy. So if retail's doing well, if building activity is strong, then there's higher demand. So I think it's been up and down over the years, but certainly investment in such a big new ship is a positive thing.
I watched the Manxman arrive here for the first time, I think it was 2 years ago now, I think, when it came through. Like, I was in this very spot, in fact, on the roundhead at Heysham, and when it came through and it turned around, I thought, yeah, it looks all right, but I wasn't impressed by the fact the funnel, for example, is just to one side. It's an impressive looking ship, from the front, but I guess compared to kind of the old style ships, like the King Orry and ships like that really were a classically good looking ship, it's a bit different, but I guess it's got to be functional, hasn't it now, and it's got to earn its keep.
Yes, I was here too when the Manxman came in, and yes, she's certainly an interesting looking vessel. There is the saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I agree with you on that funnel. I like a funnel on a ship. It's part of a ship, but definitely amongst operators these days, funnels are viewed as probably not being clean, being dirty, exhaust emissions coming out of them. So generally funnels are starting to disappear altogether from ships, which I'm probably showing my age, but it's a little bit sad to me. But things change, and the fact is it's still a ship, and the new ships, and that's interesting.
I have to say, the Steam Packet Company are listing there on board, fantastic. A great range of lounges, and it feels very kind of like a floating hotel. It feels brilliant. I wonder what it's like on this ship. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting on board the new Futura at some stage, but certainly just looking at it as we are now over your shoulder, it's a good looking ship. It'll do its job, and I guess if you're a lorry driver, you're going to be looked after. It's efficient. It should save time and money as well, and I guess that's the way the industry's going, isn't it? Making sure that the aesthetics maybe are not as important as maybe they once were, but that it does do the job.
Yes, I would say so. I too, hoping to get on board. I will be writing an article on Stena Futura for Ferry and Cruise Review magazine. So I'm looking forward to having a look myself, seeing what it's like. The one thing I do understand is I think the facilities for freight drivers that are travelling, they get better with every new vessel, more spacious cabins, better lounges as well. But I think fundamentally, of course, it's about the freight and how many trailers it can carry on the same ship at a lower operating cost.
You also enjoy writing for the magazine. Have you done all kinds of different articles over the years? What kind of things have you written about?
Yes, I've been writing for about 20 years now, and my interest in ships started as a child when my mum and dad would take us on motoring holidays to Europe, going on Sea Link and Townsend Torrington ferries, so always had an interest. And over the years I've written quite a few articles, really, sometimes a little bit niche about freight ro-ro vessels, sometimes about passenger and car ferries as well, sometimes about Mediterranean ferries. So I think it's fair to say my wife's been on a few too many ferries.
I'm sure she loves it. Well, what's the future for yourself, and what are you looking forward to covering next in terms of articles or pictures now today's been and gone?
Well, I'm writing an article on Stena Futura, and I'm also working with Ferry Publications, writing a book about the Stena E-Flexer passenger series of ferries, which have gone on to work for many other operators as well as Stena as well. Stena have designed them, and they're chartering them and selling them to other operators. So that's in the pipeline as well. But apart from that, obviously, time with family and work, because got to be careful, don't spend too much time writing about ferries.
Well, it's good fresh air, it's a good exercise and a good hobby to have, isn't it, given you can be outside in conditions like this and see things like this, and the bird life, of course, of Morecambe Bay, which has just been showing itself, a nice flock of geese flying over before. So yeah, all good to see, good to meet you, and thanks for talking to the podcast. Cheers.
Thank you. Good to have a chat.
Your look inside the world of ships and shipping. This is Full Ahead.
Well, there we go. That was an exciting start to Thursday morning.
Yeah, nice to come down and see a brand new ship arrive in Heysham Harbour. Everything went well, and yeah, just nice to be down here.
Well, she's just heading back out to sea, and we were just hearing she's actually starting earning trips from tomorrow.
Yeah, I think she's on Liverpool to Belfast for a few trips, covering for another one of the Stena vessels that's dry docking. So entering service on maybe a slightly easier route before she enters service on Heysham in Anger later in the year.
As we just saying it's the first of, I think, a second one's coming maybe early next year as well, which will obviously mark the departure of 2 long-serving Stena ships. Ferries finding new leases of life all over the world. They don't seem to just fade away. They get used and repurposed, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of old Irish sea ferries all over the world. I mean, typically kind of Mediterranean and Greece, but you'll find them in Nova Scotia, you'll find them in Baja, California, you'll find them literally all over the world, and some real old ladies as well. There are some ships from many, many years ago that are still going strong. It may be slightly easier and hotter climes, but yeah, the ferries don't often die in Northern Europe, they go to other places, it seems.
Well, talking of long-serving ships and long-serving masters as well, we recently had the joy of interviewing one of your former colleagues as well. We were aboard the Danny on that fantastic day only a few weeks ago now on the Mersey. Tell us about Dave.
Yeah, Dave McNamee, Captain Dave McNamee, one of the kind of first captains we had in the early days of sea truck ferries, but a seasoned kind of ferryman, but also a really interesting kind of history maritime-wise before he joined the ferry world. So now retired but still driving the Danny around, and as we kind of sit here today looking at brand new ships, it's also good to remember the people that have gone before, and you know what an amazing kind of career Dave has had, and you know be really interesting to hear his story.
I was born and brought up and lived in Worsley, which was about 3 or 4 miles from the Manchester Ship Canal, and I used to spend a lot of time down there watching these ships coming and going from all over the world. And I don't know, from an early age I wanted to go away to sea. When I was 13 I managed to get a trip on a ship called the Caledonian Coast, one of Coastline's ships, Liverpool, Belfast, down to Plymouth, London River, Dublin and back.
Right, just wind back a second there, sorry, just to interrupt you, Dave, my apologies, but at the age of 13 you managed to get a trip on a ship around all those places?
Yes, I did, as a supernumerary. And people sometimes say, well, what does a supernumerary do? And the only answer that I can give was that the supernumerary gets in everybody's way all the time. And I did.
And your family was in shipping, or how did you manage to get on board that ship at the age of 13?
It was a friend of my father's. My father wanted to go away to sea, but for obvious reasons he couldn't. He didn't come back into this country until the end of the Second World War, and I think that his interest transferred to me.
And so that first trip at the age of 13, that really cemented the idea that you wanted to go to sea? It didn't put you off?
It didn't put me off whatsoever. And then when I was 15 and school holidays in the summer, I got a job on the Mona's Queen as a galley boy.
The Mona's Queen being an Isle of Man ferry back in the day?
Yeah, out of Liverpool to Douglas, and then every Friday it was Douglas, Ramsey, when they had a pier at Ramsey, round the Point of Ayr to Belfast, and then back again in the evening. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I finished up after 5 weeks with the cleanest smelling hands that you've ever seen, but it certainly didn't deter me.
Back then we heard in episode 1 Harvey's story. I know you know Harvey personally as well, and how he went through nautical college at Fleetwood back in the day, and excuse my kind of reference to a number of years again, but a little while ago, shall we say, Dave. How did you go about then getting your qualifications, and was it more all hands on deck back then?
No, it was strange really, Alistair, because a friend of mine had just docked in Manchester from Durban on a ship called the Khuzestan, owned by Frank C. Strick and Company. They'd loaded grain in Durban, and he arranged for me and my parents to go down on a Sunday afternoon to have a look round, which we did. And after a couple of 3 hours we said our goodbyes, but the chief officer said, don't go, the captain knows that there are visitors on board. So he took us up to the captain's accommodation, Captain Thomas Farrer from Middlesbrough. Now I was on school half term, I was still 15, and we were talking, and he looked at me and he said, and what are you going to do with your life, lad? And I said, I want to go away to sea, sir. And he turned to my father and looked at him and said, bring the boy down tomorrow at 2 o'clock. One of the marine superintendents from London is coming up and he'll give him an interview. We went down to the ship at 2 o'clock on the Monday, and the marine superintendent, Captain Ellis, interviewed me. and it was in the days when telephones were actually put on board the ship, and he dialed the office number in London, and after several questions he said there will be an application form in the post for you tomorrow morning. So Tuesday morning came, application form arrived, wasn't quite sure about some of the questions, and my father said, we'll go to the sub office in Manchester and they'll help you. And I went into Strick's office in St Anne's Square in Manchester to see Mr Brooks, who was the personnel manager, an absolute gent, bow tie, smoked a pipe, and he was asking all sorts of questions, and he dialed the head office in London. He said, I've got this boy McNamee here, application form filled in, and of course it was a one-way conversation. Yes, yes. And then he asked me more questions. Yes, yes, right, I'll tell him now. Put the phone down. He said, when do you go back to school? I said, well, I'm on half term, I go back on Monday. He said, they're offering you a cadetship here and now, take it or leave it.
So what did you do? We're all waiting with bated breath now. I presume you took it, Dave.
Of course I did. What do you think I did?
What were your parents, your education? Was there any pressure to stay at school?
No. There's always something happens in one's life, and that something happened to me that day when they offered me a cadetship.
And that was it? You never looked back? That was the start of your career at sea?
It was the start of my career at sea, and I got a letter to say that I was to join the motor vessel Bardistan in Glasgow. She was coming in from Lourenco Marques in what was then Portuguese East Africa with grain. So I had 2 suitcases. Father took me into the railway station in Manchester, and he said, you've not forgotten anything, have you? So I said, yes, I have. He said, and what have you forgotten? I said, I've forgotten the keys to my suitcases. Anyway, prior to the train leaving, there's a tap on the window, and who should be on the platform in a pinny dangling keys was my mother, and she'd come all the way into Manchester on the milk float from the farm with the keys, and I joined the ship in Glasgow, and that was the start of my cadetship.
I just can't kind of put myself in that position at the age of... Were you 16 at that stage?
16.
So even at the age of 16, to be jumping on a train with your suitcases, to go to Glasgow, to get on a ship to go to who knows where, you might not even know where you're going at that stage. Were you not scared? Were you not frightened?
No, I was overawed. It was a dream come true. It's what I'd always wanted to do. I never thought of anything else but going away to sea.
But when you get on board, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, or your clogs as you're wearing, or we've just been talking about your fine clogs that you're wearing, but you know, to get on a ship with lots of grown men presumably, did they treat you well? Were you treated badly? Was it a kind of a family thing, or was it very difficult?
It was totally different. The chief officer said to me, he said, your job tonight, lad, is to go and get the fish and chips. I'd never been to Glasgow in my life. Anyway, I found the fish and chip shop, and I got lost on the way back. And of course, by the time I got back to the ship, the fish and chips were cold, and I got a rollicking for that. But I'd only been on the ship for about 6 hours, for goodness sake. But I fitted in. We went to Antwerp, we loaded part cargo in Antwerp, across to London, and we loaded for 14 ports in the Persian Gulf.
Crikey, I mean, you couldn't get further from Worsley to the Persian Gulf at the age of 16. And that first voyage, do you still remember that first voyage? Do you still remember the ports and the kind of, I don't know, the whole learning curve of being on a ship?
Yes, I do. We were given 2 afternoons, I must say I was given 2 afternoons a week off to study navigation, chart work, stability, maths, but the rest of the time I was chipping rust, I was learning to splice ropes, learning to splice wires, and I remember being off the Portuguese coast, and it was a beautiful day, and it was smoko, it was coffee time in the morning, and the third engineer said to me, he said, have you got your letters ready? So I said, no, why? He said, well, the lighthouse that we're passing is run by monks, and because it's a calm day, they'll come out in the boat and take all the mail and post it free of charge. He said, go and write a quick note to your mum. I said, what do I do with it then? He said, well, take it up to the old man, up to the captain. So I put, dear mum, blah, 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 sealed it, took it up to the captain, knocked on his door. He said, what do you want? I said, excuse me, sir, could you give this letter to the monks when they come on board? Well, he called me all the names under the sun.
It was a wind-up, presumably.
It was a wind-up. I was a first trip cadet, and I'd been well and truly wound up. Well, that's the way that it went.
And the age-old question, I mean, this one's close to my heart, but Dave, did you get seasick on that first trip?
Never.
You've never been seasick in your life?
I've never, ever been seasick. There are times, Alistair, when I've been sick of the sea, but I've never been seasick.
Well, probably a good job to be in then. If you don't get seasick, you probably found a good role in life. But without going through every single job you've ever had, how did your career then progress from that first crossing across to the Persian Gulf? Where did you then go? What kind of ships did you serve on? Give us a quick potted history of your career from there.
Well, the first ship was the Bardistan, built in 1942. 5 hatches, 10 knots, 7,000 gross, 10,000 deadweight. From the Persian Gulf, we went in ballast down to Cape Town to load grain for Manchester. Came home, 3 weeks leave, back again, 14 ports in the Gulf. Then we went down to the Kerala coast in India to load ilmenite sand for Immingham. Came back home, then I was transferred to the Quayside, virtually a brand new ship. Again out to the 14 ports in the Gulf, and we went down to East London in South Africa. Other voyages from the Gulf down to Mauritius to load bulk sugar for Montreal in ballast down to Philadelphia for grain.
And were these the days, the kind of heyday of shipping almost, where when you got to a port there was actually time to get off and look around, or did you see the world, or did you just see ports and loading and offloading and not much else?
We saw the world. I remember in Mauritius, the barges used to come out at about 7:30 in the morning, loaded with sacks of sugar, and we used to part the hatch boards to about 12 inches. They would dump the sacks on the hatch boards and then literally cut the top of the sack, empty it by hand into the hold, and once those sacks had all been emptied that day, that was the end of the day. So sometimes the day finished at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We were there for 3 weeks. And I took the weekend off with some of the others, and we climbed up to La Pousse, the tallest mountain on Mauritius. It was wonderful. I joined another ship called the Kyrgyzstan, and I was away for 14 months in that ship.
And I think you often see in the kind of maritime world that people like you start deep sea and do these big long voyages and 3 months away from home, and then coming back for a month or 6 weeks or whatever. And then as people's careers progress, they maybe want to be at home a bit longer, they've got maybe a family, a kids, whatever. And so did you enjoy the long voyages, or I know in your latter stages you were working on ferries and doing 2 weeks on a ship and 2 weeks off, and if you could have your time again, what was the really enjoyable bit, the longer voyages or the kind of the bus stop kind of ferry services?
Well, the long voyages it was the norm. Whether you were married with a family, if you went away to sea, that's what you had to do. Unless you became a pilot, or in those days onto the ferries. But there's far more of a choice today, or is there far more of a choice? I don't know. Perhaps there were certainly more ships, more shipping companies, and you had a greater choice. I will go with this company, I will go with that company. But there was never ever a time when I thought, hell's bells, I've been away for 6 months, I've been away for 14 months. I'm fed up with it. No, never. I was never fed up with it.
So your longest voyage was 14 months?
I was away from home 14 months. Right. I went down to out to the Persian Gulf. We discharged. We loaded in the Persian Gulf for the continent. We discharged on the continent, loaded on the continent, back to the Gulf, and then from there right down round Sri Lanka up to Chittagong in the northern part of the Bay of Bengal, and then to Chalna in what was now Bangladesh. It was East Pakistan at the time. Calcutta, 3 weeks in Calcutta. Madras, now Chennai. Then down to Sri Lanka, 10 days in Sri Lanka. Then up the Kerala coast, and then ports in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean, and I finished up in dry dock in Antwerp and got the ferry back to Harwich, went to the office, collected my wages, and that was the end of a 14-month voyage, and I had 6 weeks at home, and then I went to the Nautical College in Fleetwood to do my second mate certificate.
It's an amazing story, and amazing kind of trips you've been on. I imagine some kind of hairy situations too, some interesting weather situations, and probably at times where you might have felt kind of unsafe in certain countries or in certain situations. But can you think about kind of some of those really difficult times too?
Yes, I can. We talk about now climate change. I spent quite a bit of time in the offshore oil industry on supply ships, and I was in one ship called the Toyser Conqueror, and I was working 150 miles to the northeast of Shetland, and my brief was to wait for the shuttle tanker coming in, and she had a huge manifold on the forecastle. She'd tie up to the storage unit, and I had to back into her stern to put a line on and keep her head to the wind. But in the 4 weeks that we were away, the weather was so bad that I never saw this shuttle tanker. And on January the 1st, 1994, I'd been on the bridge for 30 hours in horrific weather. And the second mate was on the bridge with me, with a lookout, and one of them said, "For crying out loud, skipper, look at this." And there was a wall of white water coming towards us. And we went to the top of the crest of the wave and went down into the trough, and the ship was completely enveloped in water. And she came up and she shook herself, and at 6 o'clock on New Year's morning, the wireless operator on the rig radioed to wish me a happy new year, and he said, "If it's any compensation, Captain, at 3 o'clock this morning the wind peaked at 125 miles an hour and we've just recorded a 20-metre sea." And they go on about climate change and strong winds. No, I'm sorry, it's happened before. Nothing new.
I can't even imagine those kind of conditions. It just sounds incredible. But I guess such change as well. In the time you've been in shipping, you've gone from old-fashioned kind of, bulk cargo ships and paper charts and 3 weeks in port to kind of today's world with ECTIS and getting in and out of port as quickly as you can, and efficiency and speed. And what's better? Is all the tech we've got now, does that make life better, or do you hark back to the days where it was simpler and kind of more manual navigation? And
I hark back to the old days. We hear today of collisions at sea. This happens at sea, that happens at sea. And when I was a lecturer at Fleetwood, I used to say to my cadets that the best thing that you have for preventing a collision is using your eyes. Never mind this piece of technology or that piece of technology. When I was in the ferries, sea truck ferries, I would not allow anybody in pilotage waters, including me as the captain, to use a mobile phone. If the office phoned me, I knew who it was from the number, they knew where I was, I wouldn't answer the phone. They could talk to me when I'd got the ship tied up.
Yeah, we've seen a lot about kind of safety issues with mobile phone distraction, and we know it all ourselves. We've all read a text or tried to make a phone call when we shouldn't in the car, and on a ship it's just the same. People on their phone on the bridge, it's a really dangerous situation, and there's a distraction that wasn't there back in your early days. I'd imagine you'd go for weeks without being able to speak to your family at all.
I did it. I was on one ship and I never had any contact at all with my wife. When I left for my tour of duty for a month, we were negotiating to buy a new house, and of course I had to go back to sea. And then when I was coming into Aberdeen, we got a signal on the phone, so I phoned my wife and I said, I'm leaving the ship at about 6 o'clock. The chief officer's in the car with me. Meet me at the Tickle Trout on the M6, and he's going to carry on to Holyhead. And she said, "I'm so glad you're coming home." So I said, "Well, so am I." She said, "Yeah, but we're moving house tomorrow."
You didn't know you were moving house?
No, I didn't.
I mean, in today's world, you just can't imagine turning back after a long shift at sea and finding out you're moving home. I mean, that's just incredible to me to hear that.
I'd never had any contact with home. used to get letters, but there was nothing in the letters that said we're moving house.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the news at the moment about is technology making our lives better or worse or more difficult? Are we more or less connected than we were before? And
Well, if I hark back to the old days when we used to use a sextant, if we hadn't seen the sun, the moon, the stars for 3 or 4 days, everything was done on dead reckoning. You had to use your knowledge of the wind and the tides to see where you were. And when the sun did come out, or you could see the stars, and you got the old trusty sextant, and you put a position on the chart which was perhaps 5, maybe 10 miles from where you thought you were. Well, what's 5 or 10 miles when you're crossing the Pacific? And I used to ask my cadets, where was the sextant on your last ship? I don't know, never even saw one. People say, do you miss the sea? Yes, I do miss the sea. But I miss the way that it used to be. And I can't help that.
And our careers kind of crossed in the early days of Sea Truck Ferries, where I was kind of, along with a group of other people, starting a small new ferry company on the Irish Sea, and you were one of our kind of early captains. And that was a change for you, moving from deep sea ships onto kind of regular ferry services. And how did you find that change from being at sea for a long time to doing that kind of 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off kind of scenario?
When I joined the Moon Dance to start off with, after 2 weeks, came home and my wife said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I don't know whether it's for me. I'm finding the weather a bit cold. I mean, I'd been wearing shorts and nothing but a t-shirt out in Southeast Asia, and I said, I'll give it till Christmas. And I gave it till Christmas, and 14 years later I retired from, and I'm not saying it because Alistair's here and doing the interview, but I loved every minute of my 50-something years at sea. I had no regrets whatsoever. Would I recommend it to anybody else? I don't know. It's totally different, and it's a different type of seafarer that we're getting today.
In what way? Why is it different today?
I think it's the technology. My first ship, there were 54 of a crew. There were 12 Brits and the rest were Indians. My last ship, the Clipper Point, there was 23 crew. That is the difference, that you've gone from a large crew to a small crew. But technology has been the reason for that.
Is that one of the reasons it's great to be back involved with the Danny here? You're back on a ship that's kind of a different era, a different age.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. This is how it used to be, and this is what I enjoy.
And you first came on board this ferry vessel when you were
5 years old. I did a trip with my father from Manchester docks to the top side of Barton locks, and father had a cup of tea and I had a bottle of lemonade, and then I used to see her fairly frequently on my trips down to Barton Bridge taking photographs, and never ever did I think that I would be one day the captain of such a beautiful historic ship.
And so you stepped down from kind of full-time work and then you got involved in some other projects, but getting involved with the Danny was really part of that. It was giving you something to do in retirement, to keep your hand in, to meet some people and have some fun, I guess.
I do have fun, but ships and the sea, as you well know, Alistair, they are my life. I don't know any different. I've just enjoyed every minute of it, and I will continue to enjoy every minute of it on this particular ship.
Captain Dave McNamee, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and thank you for giving us your time and for showing us around this fine vessel as well. But it's been lovely to see you, and any words of wisdom for someone who wants to start a career in seafaring, who wants to join a ship, any words of wisdom from you?
Think carefully about what you want to do, why you want to go to sea. Is it you want to see the world? Yes, you will see the world, but not the world that I was fortunate enough to see.
But still, 90% of all goods around the world are ultimately transported by ship, and there's going to be a need for ships and shipping for, well, forever, isn't there?
Without a doubt. And I have one young lad who I've mentored from the day that he joined his first ship, and he's now sailing as chief officer, about to take his master's ticket. I just enjoy passing my knowledge onto those who will take over from what I do.
And it's a lovely full circle moment just as we talk here. We're just entering the Manchester ship canals. We're sat here today. When you were 5 years old, you were coming, I think, in the other direction down the Manchester ship canal on this very same vessel. But thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to the rest of our cruise today.
Yeah, well, we've done the River Mersey. You're now doing the Manchester Ship Canal, and then we'll be doing the River Weaver. So you've had 3 for the price of 1.
Thank you, Dave. It's been great.
Talk about joining the merchant navy and seeing the world. I mean, in Dave's case, he certainly didn't he?
Yeah, it's really good to see Dave again. He's a real character, and some of those stories and kind of your first ship and 16 and heading on that train, and it's just mad stuff, isn't it, when you think about kids and what they would be prepared to do today, maybe. But it's just been a really interesting episode, a great episode of the Full Ahead podcast with the old and the new, I guess. The Danny, the oldest steam tug in Britain, speaking to Dave and his history and his life at sea, and then seeing a brand new ship come into Heysham Harbour and that kind of juxtaposition between the two. It's been a really interesting episode.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And cheers to Dave again for being so open about his career. I mean, watching you speak to and interview him, the spark in his eyes and the kind of, you can tell from the interview, the passion in his voice as well. He's still very committed to the sea and to maritime matters as he is now, as he ever was, I guess.
Yeah, he's got a real love for the sea, hasn't he? You could just tell, and he feels at home when he's on board a ship, and not somewhere I've always felt at home myself, but he's never been seasick. I can't claim the same myself. So, but yeah, no, just great to see Dave. Great to see the new ship here today, and just great to be doing this podcast. And we've got some exciting things coming up. All will be revealed, but follow us on Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll get some more episodes to you in the near future.